Hello, drama lovers, welcome back to my channel today. Diane stunned everyone when she appeared to reach a breaking point in her marriage and announced that she was ready to walk away from Jack for good. To outsiders, her declaration sounded final, emotional, and completely sincere. Friends and family who overheard her words were left wondering whether one of Genoa City's most complicated relationships had finally reached its end. Yet beneath the dramatic announcement was a far more calculated strategy. Diane's shocking divorce declaration was not necessarily about ending her marriage. It was about deceiving Dr. Markham and gaining an advantage in a dangerous situation. As tensions continued to rise, Diane found herself facing increasing pressure from all directions. Questions surrounding Dr. Markham had become impossible to ignore. His behavior had raised suspicions, and several people close to Diane feared that he was hiding information that could change everything. Diane knew that confronting him directly would likely accomplish nothing. If he sensed that she was suspicious, he would become more guarded and harder to read. Instead, she chose a different approach. Diane decided to create a convincing distraction, one dramatic enough to pull attention away from her real intentions. By publicly claiming that her marriage to Jack was finished, she hoped to make Dr. Markham believe that she was emotionally vulnerable and distracted by personal turmoil. If he accepted the story, he might lower his guard and reveal information he would otherwise keep hidden. The plan was risky from the start. Jack had always been one of Diane's strongest allies, despite the many ups and downs they had experienced throughout the years. Their relationship had survived betrayals, misunderstandings, and countless family conflicts. Because of that history, the idea of Diane suddenly walking away seemed believable enough to convince outsiders while still shocking enough to create confusion. When Diane first delivered the news, reactions were immediate. People close to the couple struggled to understand what had happened. Some assumed another argument had pushed them beyond the point of reconciliation. Others wondered whether secrets had emerged that neither Diane nor Jack had been willing to discuss publicly. Rumors spread quickly, and speculation intensified with every passing hour. Diane allowed the uncertainty to grow. The more convincing the illusion became, the more effective her strategy would be. She knew that maintaining the deception required commitment. Any sign that she and Jack remained united could destroy the entire operation. Meanwhile, Dr. Markham appeared to take the bait. From Diane's perspective, subtle changes in his behavior suggested that he was beginning to believe her story. Conversations became less guarded. His confidence seemed to increase. Most importantly, he appeared less concerned about being closely watched. That was exactly what Diane had hoped for. The situation became even more complicated as Jack struggled with the role he needed to play. Although he understood Diane's reasoning, pretending that their marriage was collapsing was far from easy. Every interaction had to look authentic. Every conversation had to reinforce the illusion. For Jack, the emotional cost was significant. He hated seeing friends and family worry about their relationship. He disliked allowing false rumors to spread unchecked. Yet he also recognized that exposing the truth too soon could undermine everything Diane was trying to accomplish. As a result, he reluctantly supported the plan. The deception soon created ripple effects throughout the community. Family members began choosing sides. Some blamed Diane for giving up too quickly, while others questioned whether Jack had done something to drive her away. The uncertainty generated exactly the kind of chaos Diane needed. Dr. Markham watched it all unfold. The apparent collapse of Diane and Jack's marriage seemed to reinforce his belief that Diane was focused entirely on her personal problems. If she was consumed by heartbreak and uncertainty, he would have little reason to suspect that she was actively investigating him. That false sense of security became increasingly valuable. As the days passed, Diane continued gathering observations. She paid attention to every conversation, every reaction, and every inconsistency. Little by little, pieces of a larger puzzle began coming together. The challenge, however, was maintaining control of the narrative. Once rumors begin spreading, they often develop lives of their own. Diane soon realized that some people were adding details that had never happened. Stories evolved. Assumptions multiplied. What began as a carefully planned deception threatened to become unpredictable. Even so, Diane remained focused. She reminded herself that the ultimate goal was uncovering the truth. Personal discomfort was a small price to pay if it helped expose secrets that could affect many lives. Jack also found himself under increasing scrutiny. Friends questioned him directly. Family members demanded explanations. Some encouraged him to fight for his marriage, while others warned him to prepare for the worst. Each conversation forced him to maintain the charade. The strain became exhausting. Despite that pressure, Jack remained determined to help Diane succeed. He trusted her instincts and believed that Dr. Markham was hiding something significant. If this strategy offered the best chance of revealing the truth, he was willing to endure temporary hardship. Meanwhile, Dr. Markham continued behaving as though he had nothing to fear. That confidence intrigued Diane. People often reveal the most when they believe they are safe. By convincing him that she was distracted by marital problems, Diane had potentially created the perfect environment for mistakes to occur. Soon, those mistakes began appearing. Certain comments failed to align with earlier statements. Small inconsistencies emerged. Information that had once seemed insignificant started taking on greater meaning. Diane carefully noted every detail. The more she learned, the more convinced she became that her suspicions were justified. At the same time, maintaining the deception became increasingly difficult. Emotional moments with Jack occasionally threatened to expose the truth. Their genuine affection for one another sometimes surfaced despite their efforts to appear estranged. Whenever that happened, Diane quickly corrected course. She understood that one careless interaction could undo weeks of preparation. Dr. Markham needed to believe that her marriage was truly over. The stakes continued rising. If Diane succeeded, she could uncover answers that had remained hidden for far too long. If she failed, she risked damaging relationships, losing credibility, and allowing Dr. Markham to become even more cautious. Nevertheless, she refused to back down. Her determination stemmed from a belief that the truth mattered more than temporary appearances. Too many questions remained unanswered. Too many inconsistencies demanded investigation. As Diane pressed forward, those around her became increasingly concerned. Some worried that she was making a terrible mistake by ending her marriage. Others believed she was acting impulsively because of stress and frustration. Very few people realized that her apparent decision was actually part of a larger strategy. That secrecy was essential. The fewer people who knew the truth, the more believable the deception would remain. Diane understood that even well-intentioned allies could accidentally reveal information if they knew too much. Jack shared that concern. Although he wanted to defend Diane publicly, he recognized that silence was often the best option. Allowing people to believe the worst helped protect the operation. Meanwhile, Dr. Markham appeared increasingly comfortable. His growing confidence created opportunities Diane could never have obtained through direct confrontation. Every interaction provided additional insight into his thinking and motivations. Still, uncertainty remained. Diane could not be completely sure that he had accepted the story. There was always the possibility that he suspected a trap and was simply hiding his awareness. That possibility forced her to remain cautious. Trusting assumptions could be dangerous. Instead, Diane focused on evidence. She evaluated actions rather than appearances. She looked for patterns instead of relying on intuition alone. Gradually, the picture became clearer. Information that once seemed disconnected began fitting together. Motives became easier to understand. Hidden relationships started emerging. Diane felt closer than ever to discovering what Dr. Markham had been concealing. The closer she came to answers, however, the greater the risks became. People with secrets rarely react calmly when those secrets are threatened. Diane knew that exposing the truth could trigger unpredictable consequences. She had to prepare for resistance. Jack understood that reality as well. Although he supported Diane completely, he worried about the potential fallout. Investigations often create enemies. The deeper Diane dug, the more likely she was to encounter opposition. Even so, neither of them considered abandoning the plan. Too much effort had already been invested. Too much progress had been made. Walking away now would mean losing a valuable opportunity. As tensions reached new heights, Diane continued presenting the image of a woman whose marriage had fallen apart. She maintained the performance despite emotional challenges and growing complications. To observers, she appeared heartbroken and defeated. In reality, she was more focused than ever. Every conversation, every reaction, and every clue brought her closer to understanding the truth. The apparent divorce announcement had achieved exactly what she intended. It redirected attention away from her investigation and encouraged Dr. Markham to underestimate her. Whether the strategy would ultimately succeed remained uncertain. What was clear, however, was that Diane had proven herself willing to take extraordinary risks in pursuit of answers. By placing her marriage at the center of a carefully constructed deception, she created an opportunity that might expose secrets capable of changing everything. Now the question is whether Dr. Markham will realize he has been manipulated before it is too late. If Diane uncovers the evidence she seeks, her shocking divorce announcement may be remembered not as the end of her relationship with Jack, but as the masterstroke that allowed her to outsmart a dangerous opponent. Until the truth finally emerges, Diane's dramatic declaration will continue to send shockwaves through everyone around her. Friends will worry. Family members will speculate, and Dr. Markham may continue believing he has gained an advantage. But appearances can be deceiving. And if Diane's plan works, the person who thinks he is watching her fall apart may soon discover that he was the one being played all along. The longer Diane kept up the illusion, the more complicated her situation became. What had started as a calculated move against Dr. Markham was now affecting nearly every corner of her life. People she cared about were hurting, relationships were being tested, and rumors were spreading faster than she could control them. Yet despite the growing fallout, Diane remained convinced that she was doing the right thing. Every day brought fresh challenges. Friends approached her with concern, asking whether there was still hope for reconciliation with Jack. Some encouraged her to reconsider her decision before it was too late. Others offered sympathy, assuming she was suffering through the collapse of her marriage. Diane listened carefully, often saying very little. The less she explained, the more believable her story became. Still, maintaining the deception took a toll. There were moments when she wanted nothing more than to reveal the truth and put an end to the confusion. Seeing worried expressions on familiar faces wasn't easy. Watching people speculate about her future with Jack was even harder. Yet she knew that exposing the plan prematurely could destroy everything she had worked toward. Meanwhile, Dr. Markham appeared increasingly relaxed. Diane noticed subtle changes whenever she interacted with him. His answers became less rehearsed. He seemed more willing to discuss subjects he had previously avoided. There were even moments when he appeared almost arrogant, as though he believed he had completely escaped suspicion. That confidence was exactly what Diane needed. People often become careless when they think they are safe. The more secure Dr. Markham felt, the more opportunities Diane had to learn what he was hiding. At the same time, Jack was facing his own difficulties. The public perception of their marriage was becoming increasingly painful. People who had once admired their relationship now discussed it as though it were already over. Some blamed Diane entirely. Others suggested that Jack had somehow failed her. Hearing those conversations was frustrating, but Jack understood that reacting emotionally could compromise the plan. Instead, he remained patient. Privately, he and Diane stayed in close communication whenever possible. They reviewed developments, compared observations, and discussed next steps. Their partnership remained strong behind closed doors, even as they projected a completely different image to the outside world. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. The stronger their teamwork became, the more convincingly they had to pretend they were falling apart. As the investigation continued, Diane began noticing patterns that she had previously overlooked. Certain names kept appearing in conversations involving Dr. Markham. Specific events seemed connected in ways that were not immediately obvious. Small details that once appeared insignificant started taking on new meaning. Piece by piece, the mystery was unfolding. Still, Diane understood that assumptions could be dangerous. She needed proof, not theories. No matter how suspicious Dr. Markham appeared, accusations without evidence would accomplish nothing. That realization made patience even more important. Rather than rushing toward conclusions, Diane focused on gathering information. She carefully documented inconsistencies and looked for connections that could withstand scrutiny. Every discovery raised new questions, but it also brought her closer to understanding the full picture. Unfortunately, the deeper she dug, the more dangerous the situation seemed. Some of the information she uncovered suggested that Dr. Markham's secrets extended far beyond what anyone had initially suspected. What began as a few unanswered questions now appeared linked to larger issues with potentially serious consequences. Diane couldn't ignore that possibility. If she was correct, exposing the truth could affect multiple lives. It wasn't simply a matter of proving someone dishonest. The stakes were much higher than that. Meanwhile, tensions within the family continued growing. Kyle struggled to understand what was happening between Diane and Jack. Although he respected both of them, the apparent breakdown of their marriage troubled him deeply. He wanted answers, but Diane couldn't provide them without jeopardizing the entire operation. As a result, she was forced to watch her son wrestle with uncertainty. That was one of the hardest parts of the deception. Diane had spent years trying to rebuild trust with the people she loved. Now she was intentionally creating confusion and allowing misunderstandings to flourish. Even though she believed the sacrifice was necessary, it still weighed heavily on her conscience. Jack experienced similar frustrations. He hated allowing family members to worry unnecessarily. More than once, he considered ending the charade and revealing the truth. Yet every time he reviewed the evidence Diane had collected, he became convinced that they needed to continue. The closer they got to answers, the less sense it made to stop. Then came a breakthrough. During what seemed like an ordinary interaction, Dr. Markham made a comment that immediately caught Diane's attention. On the surface, it sounded harmless, but when compared with previous statements, it created a contradiction that couldn't easily be explained. Diane remained calm. Rather than confronting him, she filed the information away and continued the conversation as though nothing unusual had happened. Inside, however, she knew she had just uncovered something important. The inconsistency strengthened her suspicions. If Dr. Markham had nothing to hide, why were his stories changing? Why did certain details shift depending on the circumstances? The more Diane examined the evidence, the harder it became to dismiss those questions. At the same time, Dr. Markham seemed completely unaware that he had revealed anything significant. His confidence continued growing. From his perspective, Diane appeared, emotionally exhausted and preoccupied with her personal life. He likely believed she was incapable of focusing on anything else. That misconception remained one of Diane's greatest advantages. Still, danger lurked beneath the surface. The closer Diane came to the truth, the greater the chance that someone would realize what she was doing. If Dr. Markham discovered that the divorce announcement was merely a tactic, he could quickly change his behavior and erase months of progress. Worse, he might retaliate. That possibility was never far from Diane's mind. She understood that people protecting secrets often react unpredictably when threatened. The situation required careful planning and constant vigilance. Jack shared those concerns. He began paying closer attention to developments around them, watching for signs that their deception might be unraveling. While Diane focused on gathering evidence, Jack concentrated on protecting their strategy. Together, they formed a surprisingly effective team. Their shared determination helped them navigate challenges that might have overwhelmed either of them individually. Even when frustration mounted, they continued supporting one another. Ironically, the fake divorce was strengthening their real relationship. Facing adversity together reminded them why they had fought so hard to rebuild their marriage in the first place. Trust, communication, and loyalty became more important than ever. Unfortunately, the outside world saw none of that. Observers continued interpreting every interaction through the lens of separation and conflict. Innocent moments were analyzed for hidden meaning. Casual conversations sparked new rumors. The speculation became relentless. Diane accepted that reality as part of the cost. What mattered now was reaching the finish line. Eventually, she uncovered another clue that seemed to connect several loose ends. The discovery didn't provide all the answers she needed, but it pointed her in a promising direction. More importantly, it suggested that Dr. Markham's actions might have been motivated by reasons nobody had considered. That possibility changed everything. If Diane's theory proved correct, the consequences could be far-reaching. Long-standing assumptions would need to be reevaluated. Alliances could shift. Relationships could be tested. For the first time, Diane began wondering whether the truth might be even more shocking than the deception she had created. As that realization settled in, she knew one thing with certainty. She couldn't stop now. Too many pieces were finally falling into place. Too many questions were on the verge of being answered. Abandoning the investigation at this stage would mean walking away from the very truth she had sacrificed so much to uncover. The coming days promised to be critical. Either Diane would obtain the evidence needed to expose Dr. Markham once and for all, or the entire operation could collapse under the weight of its own complexity. There seemed to be little middle ground. Yet despite the uncertainty, Diane remained determined. She had risked her reputation, her peace of mind, and even the public perception of her marriage. Those sacrifices would mean nothing if she backed down now. Somewhere behind Dr. Markham's carefully constructed facade lay the answers she had been searching for. The question was whether she could reach them before he realized that the woman he believed was distracted by heartbreak had actually been investigating him all along. And if that moment finally arrived, the fallout could be explosive. Secrets would be exposed. Lies would be challenged. Trust would be shattered. Most importantly, Diane's stunning divorce announcement would be revealed for what it truly was, not the end of her marriage to Jack, but the opening move in a dangerous game of deception that may soon bring Dr. Markham's entire world crashing down.